There comes a moment in every inner journey when the most powerful thing you can do is leave quietly, not with a speech, not with a dramatic goodbye, just less of you where your soul keeps shrinking. Carl Jung understood something that high-vibration people, empaths, and old souls eventually discover the hard way. Your psyche cannot heal in the same environment that keeps wounding it. Your nervous system doesn't grow stronger in rooms where it's always on alert. And your best self doesn't emerge under the spotlight of constant noise, drama, and expectations. That's why, for many people on a path of individuation and shadow work, the first step is not to add something new. It's to disappear from what's slowly killing who you really are. Disappearing doesn't always mean packing a suitcase and vanishing from the map. Often, it's much quieter than that. You answer less. You explain less. You scroll less. You engage less with conversations that leave you empty. On the outside, it might look like you're pulling away. On the inside, you're finally coming home to yourself. High-vibration people and empaths are especially vulnerable to constant overstimulation. You feel the emotional weather in every room. You sense the unspoken tension in every chat. You pick up on the sadness behind someone's eyes, even when they're joking. Over time, this becomes a permanent background noise in your body, a nervous system stuck in a subtle fight-or-flight mode. Then one day you realize, it's not just other people's energy. It's the way you keep staying available to it. That's where Jung's quiet wisdom whispers, step back. In Jungian terms, disappearing can be seen as a protective movement of the psyche. Your soul is trying to pull you away from contexts where your authentic self cannot breathe. It's not you being cold or selfish or weird. It's your inner life saying, I can't hear myself over this noise. So the quiet path begins. You stop replying immediately to every message. You stop participating in group chats where the main topic is gossip, comparison, or subtle cruelty. You stop forcing yourself to show up for people who never once ask, how are you really doing? You start noticing how many of your habits exist only to avoid being forgotten or rejected. How many times you've said yes just to keep your place in someone else's story. How often you've ignored your body's signals, the tight chest, the drained feeling, the headache after every interaction, just to appear kind, available, or easygoing. Toxic people and toxic environments feed on emotional reaction. Silence starves them. Distance confuses them. When you disappear from these dynamics, not to punish, but to protect, something subtle happens. You remove your emotional oxygen from situations that never fed your growth. You stop being the steady supply of attention, empathy, and energy that keeps dysfunctional patterns alive. And in that empty space, something else can finally begin. At first, it feels strange. You're alone with your thoughts. The phone is quieter. The calendar has gaps. You might even feel guilty. High-vibration people are often conditioned to believe that rest is laziness and boundaries are cruelty. So when you take a quiet step back, your shadow surfaces. All the fears of abandonment, being too much or not enough. All the old stories that say your worth depends on how useful you are to others. This is where shadow work enters. Instead of running back into the noise to escape these uncomfortable feelings, you sit with them. You notice the stories your mind repeats. You ask like a gentle inner therapist, who taught me that my needs don't matter? When did I learn that disappearing to protect myself makes me a bad person? Slowly, the pattern becomes visible. The old self, the over-available, over-adapted version of you, starts to feel like a role, not a truth. In this quiet phase, your disappearance is not about becoming invisible. It's about becoming undistracted. You start hearing your real preferences. You notice what genuinely calms your nervous system. You feel the difference between a connection that nourishes you and one that leaves you empty. This is where the best self begins to grow. Not on a stage, not in the comments, not in the performance of being spiritual or healed, but in the humble decision to withdraw from what keeps you fragmented. Carl Jung once wrote that solitude is not about being alone, but about being whole in yourself. The quiet path is exactly that, a temporary disappearance from the roles, the noise, and the toxic dynamics, so you can finally meet the person you were before the world told you who to be. And here's the paradox. The more you honor this silent exit, the more clearly you'll see the one thing that was shaping your whole life without you noticing. The mask you've been wearing for years. And that's where we go next. That mask you've been wearing? In Jungian psychology, it has a name. Persona. The persona is the version of you built to survive the world. It's your social face, your role, your carefully adjusted personality that fits other people's expectations and keeps you acceptable. For high-vibration people and empaths, the persona can become extremely polished and extremely dangerous because it's built not just to be liked, but to keep everyone else comfortable. Think about it. How many times have you smiled when your chest was heavy? How often have you said, "It's fine, don't worry about it," while your nervous system was screaming? How many roles do you play in silence? The strong one, the healer, the understanding one, the one who always forgives, the one who never makes a fuss. At some point, that persona stops being a tool and becomes a prison. Carl Jung warned that if we identify too deeply with our persona, we lose access to our authentic self. We start mistaking the performance for the person. The good girl, the good employee, the calm, spiritual one becomes the only identity you're allowed to inhabit, even when your inner world is raging, grieving, or exhausted. This is why disappearing can be so crucial. When you step back from the stage, the mask starts to loosen. You begin to notice where your life has been scripted by other people's stories of who you are supposed to be. The friend who is always available. The daughter who never disappoints. The partner who understands everything. The spiritual person who never gets angry. These are not compliments. They are cages. For empaths, this is even more subtle. You don't just play roles, you merge with what others need you to be. You read the room, feel the tension, and automatically adjust your behavior to keep the peace. On the outside, you look emotionally intelligent, balanced, kind. On the inside, you have abandoned yourself so many times that you no longer know what you actually want. Disappearing, in this context, is not about running away from life. It is about quietly walking off the stage where your persona has been performing nonstop. You start saying no to the small things. No to that call you dread. No to the favor that drains you. No to being the emotional trash can for toxic people who never change. At first, it feels like you're breaking some invisible law. Good people don't do this. Spiritual people don't set hard boundaries. High-vibration people always stay open, right? No. That's the persona talking. That's the mask trying to keep its job. Your authentic self is softer and stronger at the same time. It doesn't need everyone to like you. It doesn't need to be the hero in everyone's story. It doesn't need to offer unlimited empathy to people who weaponize your kindness. Jung's process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, requires a confrontation with the persona. You have to see where you've been edited, filtered, and reshaped to fit into environments that were never meant for your soul. This is a kind of shadow work that's easy to avoid, because it doesn't look dramatic. It looks like leaving a group chat, not attending an event that feels fake, not oversharing in spaces where your vulnerability is entertainment, not sacred, breaking the pattern of explaining yourself to people who have already decided who you are. You start noticing the gap between your inner truth and your outer behavior. Your inner truth. I'm tired of this dynamic. Your outer behavior. Of course, I can help again. Your inner truth. This relationship doesn't feel safe anymore. Your outer behavior. I'll just try harder. Maybe it's my fault. Your inner truth. I need space, quiet, depth. your outer behavior. Sure, let's go out. I don't want to disappoint anyone. Every time you betray your inner truth to keep the persona intact, your self-worth takes a silent hit. Your energy drops. Your vibration lowers. You move away from your best self and closer to a hollow version of you built entirely from other people's expectations. Disappearing is a radical act because it interrupts this pattern. When you pull back, people who only know your persona will react. Some will say you've changed. Some will call you distant. Some will try to pull you back into the old script. You used to be so nice. You're not the same person anymore. But that's the point. You are not supposed to stay the same person if that person was built on self-abandonment. High vibration living isn't about being endlessly available. It's about being deeply aligned. As you step away from the persona, you might feel lost at first. If I'm not the fixer, who am I? If I'm not the endlessly understanding one, what's left? And this is where the quiet path deepens. You're not disappearing just from people. You're disappearing from the performance, from the constant need to manage how others see you, from the exhausting mission of holding everything together. In this in-between space, your identity feels blurry. The old roles don't fit, but the new self isn't fully formed yet. This is where many people run back to the persona, because at least it's familiar. At least it gets applause. But if you can stay here, if you can resist the urge to perform and choose instead to remain present with your own inner world, something powerful happens. You start to build a life that makes sense from the inside out. Your decisions stop coming from, what will they think? And start coming from, what feels true for my soul? And to hear that truth clearly, you need one thing most people secretly fear. Sacred solitude. Not loneliness. Not punishment. A deliberate, quiet space where your inner life becomes your first priority. When you first disappear, the silence feels loud. No messages, no demands, no constant pull on your energy. Just you and the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Most people run from this. High-vibration people and empaths, especially, are used to being filled by others' emotions, problems, and chaos. When that stops, there's a detox. Everything you numbed with busyness rises to the surface. Carl Jung would say, this is not a mistake. This is the doorway into individuation. Sacred solitude isn't punishment or isolation. It's a protected space where your inner life finally comes first. No performance, no persona, no toxic feedback loop. Just raw, honest contact with who you really are. In Jungian terms, the unconscious speaks through dreams, symbols, and body sensations. When your life is noisy, you miss these signals. In solitude, they get louder. Your body relaxes when certain people disappear from your daily life. Your breathing deepens when you stop checking your phone compulsively. Your mind slows down when you're not anticipating someone else's reaction. This isn't you being dramatic. It's your nervous system remembering what safety feels like. Sacred solitude is where shadow work becomes real. You start journaling honestly. I'm tired of pretending. I'm angry about how I've been treated. I'm scared to lose people if I change. You meet your inner child, the part that learned to be low maintenance, quiet, and endlessly understanding just to keep love. In the quiet, you can finally say, you were never too much. You were just alone with too little support. As you sit with these truths, your standards change. You see which relationships were built on your absence, on you shrinking, fixing, overgiving. You see who only calls when they need free therapy or validation. And instead of automatically saying yes, you pause and ask, does this feel safe? Is this reciprocal? Do I leave this interaction more alive or more drained? Slowly, you stop outsourcing your worth to attention and validation. You build small, sacred rituals that anchor you in yourself. Coffee in silence, walks without headphones, nights where you choose your own thoughts over everybody else's life online. From the outside, it may look like you've disappeared. But in reality, you're finally arriving. This is the essence of Jung's quiet path, choosing inner safety over external approval. And once you taste this kind of peace, the next phase becomes unavoidable. You start setting quiet boundaries, and some relationships begin to fade without a single fight. Carl Jung understood that as we move toward individuation, becoming who we truly are, some relationships simply cannot come with us. Not because we hate those people, but because the version of us that kept those connections alive no longer exists. High-vibration people and empaths are often allergic to conflict. You'd rather absorb the tension than start a fight. You avoid drama, you avoid scenes, you avoid being the problem. So you stay. You over-explain. You give one more chance, then another, then another. Quiet boundaries are different. They are not revenge. They are not punishment. They are a decision. I will no longer abandon myself to keep this bond alive. Instead of screaming, you respond slower. Instead of justifying, you simply don't engage. Instead of defending yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you stop sending them emotional reports. To toxic people, this is confusing. They are used to your reaction, your explanations, apologies, long messages, emotional labor. Your energy is the fuel that keeps the pattern going. When you stop feeding it, the system starts to collapse. This is one of Jung's quiet rules of the psyche. What you withdraw energy from slowly loses power over you. Think of the relationships in your life that run on your overfunctioning. You listen, they vent. You apologize, they accuse. You fix, they blame. You regulate, they explode. Now imagine what happens when you stop playing that role. You answer hours later, or not at all. You don't rush to smooth things over. You don't send long essays trying to prove you're a good person. You simply choose silence over self-betrayal. At first, your nervous system panics. Empaths are wired to scan for disapproval and danger in other people's reactions. The moment you pull back, your body floods with old fears. They'll leave. They'll talk about me. They'll think I'm selfish. This is where shadow work meets boundaries. You ask, whose voice is this? Who taught me that protecting my energy makes me a bad person? Very often, this belief traces back to early dynamics, a parent, caregiver, or authority figure who made you responsible for their emotions. You learned that love equals emotional labor. Attention equals performance. Safety equals keeping everyone else regulated while you quietly collapse inside. Quiet boundaries rewrite that script. You begin to act from the present, not from childhood. If someone constantly disrespects your limits, you don't send them a 10-paragraph explanation. You simply stop offering front-row access to your life. If a friend only appears when they need validation, you stop being instantly available. If a family member uses guilt as a weapon, you feel the sting and still choose the boundary. No angry monologue. No trying to convince them to understand you. No dragging them to your side of the story. Just a calm, consistent withdrawal of your emotional energy. To the outside world, you may look colder. In truth, you are becoming clearer. Jung would say, the more your inner center strengthens, the less you are controlled by the moods, reactions, and projections of others. For high-vibration people, this is a turning point. You realize that staying in toxic dynamics is not compassion, it's self-abandonment. You don't need to announce, I'm cutting you off. You don't need to prove your case in an emotional courtroom. You simply live differently. The people who were only connected to your wounded self, the version of you that overgave, over-explained, and over-apologized, will feel the difference. Some will push harder. Some will guilt-trip you. Some will leave. Let them. Relationships that require you to stay small are not aligned with your best self. As you hold your quiet boundaries, you start to notice something subtle. Your body feels safer around your own decisions. You are no longer betraying yourself in real time. Your self-respect slowly rises. Your vibration becomes steadier, calmer, more grounded. And here's the deep Jungian truth. Every boundary you set in the external world reflects a boundary you're finally honoring inside. You are telling your unconscious, I will not send you back into rooms where you are not safe. This is inner reparenting disguised as being less available. It is spiritual growth disguised as not replying to that text. It is self-love disguised as disappearing from places that never saw you clearly. Of course, there will be grief. You may mourn the version of you who kept everyone happy. You may mourn the fantasy of who you hoped some people would become. But underneath that grief is relief. You are no longer negotiating your worth in spaces that never truly valued you. And something beautiful happens next. The more consistent your quiet boundaries are, the more space opens up for connections that are aligned, mutual, and safe. You don't have to chase them. Your energy changes, and what matches it starts to find you. From the outside, it looks like you disappeared from certain people's lives. From the inside, you know the truth. You didn't disappear. You simply stopped walking toward those who were walking over you. And now, with fewer distractions and cleaner energy, you're finally ready for the last phase of this journey. Reappearing, not as the mask, not as the fixer, but as your integrated best self. There comes a day on this quiet path when you wake up and realize you don't miss the noise like you thought you would. Your phone is still there. The world is still loud. People are still posting, demanding, performing. But something in you is different. Your nervous system isn't constantly braced for impact. Your energy no longer leaks into every text, every crisis, every unspoken expectation. You feel something new in your chest. Space. This is the moment when the disappearing phase begins to shift. You're no longer withdrawing only out of self-defense. You're standing in a new inner center, a quiet, solid self that didn't exist before you stepped away from toxic patterns, the persona, and emotional noise. Carl Jung would say parts of your psyche that were split and silenced have started to return. Your shadow has been seen, not denied. Your inner child has been heard, not dismissed. Your authentic self has had room to breathe. Now comes the next movement in individuation. Reappearing, but not as the old you. You don't go back to the version of you that survived by abandoning itself. You emerge as someone new, not perfect, not finished, but more integrated. In real life, that looks like this. You re-enter old spaces without slipping back into old roles. You attend the family gathering, but you're no longer the unpaid therapist for everyone's unresolved trauma. You listen, but you don't absorb. You care, but you don't carry. You meet a friend for coffee, and instead of pretending you're fine, you speak honestly, without oversharing and without performing. If they can't meet you there, you notice, and quietly adjust your expectations. You may return to social media, but not as a nervous system begging for microdoses of validation. You show up with intention. You post what feels aligned, or you stay silent. Your worth is no longer measured in views, likes, or who watched your stories. High-vibration people and empaths feel this shift first in the body. Before, you tense up before setting a boundary. Now you feel more grounded. Before, you obsessed over whether someone was angry. Now, you're more curious than terrified. Before, you over-explained everything. Now, you say less and let your actions speak. You don't need to announce, I've changed. Your energy says it for you. Some people will notice. The toxic or immature ones may test you, poke at old wounds, ignore your boundaries, try to drag you back into chaos. But shadow work has rewired something important inside you. You recognize the pattern. You recognize the hook. You recognize the old identity that would have taken the bait, and you choose differently. This is what it means to be emotionally unavailable to toxic people while staying deeply available to yourself and to healthy connections. You reply slower. You choose your battles. You don't apologize for existing. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become conscious. Your empathy is no longer a bleeding wound. It's a clean, intentional gift you offer to those who earn your trust. Your high vibration is no longer a performance of love and light. It's the natural frequency of someone who stopped leaking energy into people-pleasing, self-betrayal, and unending drama. Jung would say you're living more from the self, the deep, organizing center of the psyche, than from the persona or the wounded ego. You can still be kind. You can still be gentle. You can still be soft. But you are no longer available for dynamics that require you to disappear from yourself. Here's the paradox. When you disappear to find your true self, and then reappear from this deeper place, you actually become more visible in the right way. People sense a different presence when you walk into a room. You're not the loudest. You're not the most dramatic. You're not trying to prove your worth. You're just steady. Your boundaries are clear. Your yes means yes. Your no is no, without a 5-paragraph apology attached. Some will be drawn to this. They'll feel safe because you're not playing games or orbiting around chaos. Others will fall away. They needed the older version of you, the one who overgave, overexplained, overfunctioned. Let them go. On this quiet path, success is not how many people you keep. It's how deeply you stay true to yourself while you interact with the world. Reappearing as your best self doesn't mean you never slip. You will say yes when you meant no. You will overgive sometimes. You'll catch yourself explaining more than necessary. But now you notice. You feel the misalignment in your body. And instead of shaming yourself, you gently correct course. That's real growth, not perfection, but quicker returns to your center. So when you ask, how do I come back without losing myself? Jung's quiet answer is this. You reappear slowly. You reappear differently. And you reappear with your energy guarded, your nervous system in mind, and your heart loyal to you first. You enter each room asking, can my soul breathe here? Not, what do I need to become so they accept me? If the answer is no, you already know the path. You step back, you protect your energy, and you keep walking toward the self you were always meant to be. If you're walking this journey, you're not alone. Hit like, subscribe to Hidden Mind, and share this video with someone who needs a gentle reminder that it's okay to disappear, to finally become their best self.